I come to you today with some delightful news. Sarah Palin has lost to a Democrat in Alaska, and it is absolutely fantastic, not only insofar as it's yet another humiliation for Sarah Palin, and she really deserves a little dose of humiliation, but it also does not look good for Republicans if the argument you want to be making is they are inevitably poised to crush Democrats in November. Now, in the next story, we're going to look at the latest numbers in terms of the forecasts in the House and in the Senate. But one of the things that some have been arguing is not reflected in those forecasts today is a certain momentum, a certain undefined and as of now unquantified shift towards Democrats not yet reflected in the polling. And the Sarah Palin loss in Alaska is a really, really big deal. So let's talk about it. Democrat Peltola beats Palin in Alaska special election upset, reports Politico. Now, remember, Sarah Palin was once the governor of Alaska. Alaska's a red state. Sarah Palin is a Republican, and she is a very well-known Republican in Alaska. And yet, as Joseph Gedeon writes, Democrat Mary Peltola has defeated Republican Sarah Palin in the special election for Alaska's vacant House seat, a big upset over the former governor in the state's first election under ranked choice voting. Peltola is a former state legislator who will become Alaska's first indigenous member of Congress, defeated a special election field that included Palin and another Republican, Nick Begich III. The Democrat finished first in the initial tally and then won enough second choice votes from Begich's supporters to see off Palin, who was endorsed by Trump. So this is so good in so many different ways. It's a poetic justice of many types. Number one, Sarah Palin, Republican, in a Republican state, loses to a Democrat. That's very interesting. Number two, Sarah Palin is a known Republican who was the late John McCain's running mate in 2008 for vice president, sort of started dumb Republican politics, which, of course, Trump then blew out of the water. Like Palin was nothing compared to what Trump ultimately was, but still was sort of the start of that cartoonish direction for Republicans. And also, it is another endorsement failure for Donald Trump. Now, you might be saying, David, sir, are they already calling fraud? And the answer is yes, they are. If you look at Truth Social, you will see all sorts of people saying it was obviously fraudulent. It was obviously stolen. And of course, there is no evidence of that whatsoever. And Sarah Palin managing to lose Alaska is one of the funniest and most entertaining political moments that I have seen in a while. It's really a humiliation. And it is one of these. This is a seat that Republicans have held for decades in a state that hasn't voted for a Democrat for president since LBJ. I know that we have this accurate understanding and story about Alaska, that Alaska Republicans are a little bit different. And they are. It's sort of like Vermont Democrats are a little bit different. Vermont Democrats are more in favor of gun ownership. And okay, absolutely fine. But if Vermont voted for Trump, it would still be a really big deal. And similarly, to see Alaska opt not to vote for their own former governor and vote instead for a woman who's going to be the first indigenous member of the House from Alaska ever, it's absolutely fantastic. And we can also point to the importance of ranked choice voting in this race, the first such election under ranked choice voting in Alaska. Just a lot of really great things going on here. A couple other notes from the Politico article. The defeat for Palin closes the door on an immediate political comeback. But remember, she's also on the ballot in November, where the winner will get a full 2-year term. This is just a special election because of the open seat. Sarah Palin is still in the fight in November, and that's another element to this. In the once the ranked choice tallies were applied, Mary Peltola came away with 51.5% of the vote. Palin had 48.5%. So that's about a 3-point margin, which in that race worked out to about 5,700 or so votes, 5,300 or so votes, if my math serves me. So the big story here is Democratic overperformance. And This article in Politico talks about that, and it is a really important thing. We had the Michigan example, which I told you about last week, again, in which running on the issue of women's rights, abortion rights, family planning rights, call it whatever you want, we saw another Democratic upset. And so this is why it could be argued, and it's a predictive argument, we won't know until November, it could be argued, and some are arguing, and I would to some degree argue this very same thing, that the official polling numbers right now, particularly for the House, don't necessarily reflect the momentum and the strength of the Democratic Party and Democratic enthusiasm. Now, tonight, President Joe Biden is going to address the nation from Philadelphia, sort of riding high, buoyed, as I like to say, by his recent legislative accomplishments and spiking approval rating. And Joe Biden is going to make the case for voting for Democrats in November, now just 8 weeks away, I guess we are, roughly 8.5 weeks away. That will be interesting to see. But let's now discuss where the numbers are today in looking at November. All right, so I present to you with peace and love and a word of warning the latest 538 estimates for the Senate and for the House for these midterm elections. Now, there are so many different caveats and important things to talk about, but let me give you the numbers first. In the Senate, the 538 forecast now puts it at a 68% chance that Democrats hold control of the Senate. That is greater than a 2-to-1 margin. Now, things that are 32% likely to happen all the time. So we can't count out Republicans in the Senate. It is 68 to 32 in terms of likelihood of controlling the Senate based on the 538 forecast. Over in the House, it is a 24% chance that Democrats hold the House of Representatives. It's roughly, we could say, a 3-to-1 margin by which Republicans are expected to hold the House. Now, I want to remind you guys, this doesn't mean Republicans are expected to hold 76% of the seats. In fact, not at all. It's expected to be a relatively small margin if Republicans win. But Republicans are favored to win the House by any margin by roughly 3-to-1. Now, there are many important things to talk about here. First and foremost, both of these numbers, the Democratic odds in the Senate and the Democratic odds in the House, have been climbing over time. You might remember that some months ago on the Senate side, it was like a 52% chance that Democrats were going to hold the Senate. That's basically a coin flip. That has steadily climbed and climbed and climbed. It got to 2-to-1 a few days ago, and it has now gone beyond 2-to-1. So the momentum is absolutely there in terms of Democrats. Now, they're not going to get 60 seats. Democrats are not going to get 60 seats. So in some sense, it's kind of an academic question whether Democrats, if they do hold the Senate, will have somewhere between a 50-50 majority with Kamala Harris as the 51st tie-breaking vote, up to some number under 60 senators. 60 is important because there are some measures in the Senate where you need 60 votes. A simple majority isn't enough. Democrats are not going to get 60. I don't see any path for that. So it is almost certainly going to be a situation where in order to get things done, Democrats on many issues are going to need some Republican votes. Obviously, it's better to only need 4 Republican votes than 10. No doubt about that. But that's where we're kind of operating, a very narrow margin. Now, over in the House, when you just look at the House numbers and you see, oh man, 3-to-1 margin, Republicans are expected to hold. Just a couple of months ago, the Democratic odds were far lower. I think they were around 16, 17, or 18%. So the shift from 17 to 24 in terms of the sheer raw numbers is not significant, but 7 over 17, you're talking about a roughly 40% increase in the odds that Democrats hold. Still favored to lose, but a significant change. What isn't reflected in these numbers? Democratic overperformance and Democratic electorate overrepresentation. In other words, turnout. And what we have seen now in Michigan and in New York and in Alaska is that the polls did not reflect a correct weighting on the basis of Democratic enthusiasm. And we've talked before about a number of the different reasons for this enthusiasm. Part of it includes, yes, the overturning of Roe v. Wade by this right-wing Supreme Court. Part of it includes Republican inaction on gun safety, although over the last month, that's probably faded a little bit in people's minds. And the very dramatic shift in all of a sudden, the MAGA right is in massive legal trouble. Trump might be getting indicted, Republican civil war, all of these different things. And on the Democratic side, things are quite calm. Joe Biden is racking up legislative accomplishments, the PACT Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, infrastructure, a very good jobs report. We are essentially at full employment. Wages are up. Inflation is down. Gas prices are down. And all of a sudden, there are people who are saying, what is the choice here? A party in disarray, soon facing indictments, the Republican Party, or Joe Biden, who has very quietly gotten a bunch of things done, student loan debt forgiveness now coming, people talking about maybe something on cannabis, et cetera, et cetera. That is not reflected in the numbers. And so while historically this should be a very bad election for Democrats, it's increasingly looking less and less bad. We're going to continue following the numbers, and I hope you'll join me tonight, roughly 7 p.m. Eastern, for Joe Biden's address to the nation. I think it will be very interesting. I will be live on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at dpacman. Let me know what you make of these numbers. One of our sponsors today is Ketoned. We all have heard about the ketogenic diet, which puts your body in a metabolic state of ketosis. Many have reported that it's helpful for curbing hunger or even weight loss. Ketoned is the top-rated ketone supplement on the market. It allows you to enjoy the benefits without dramatically restricting your carbs. And if you already follow a ketogenic diet, Ketoned is a great way to instantly boost your ketone levels. Their formula works in under 20 minutes. Take Ketoned Advanced Blend and then test your ketone levels and see for yourself. Comes in delicious flavors like Aloha Punch, Tiger's Blood, Citrus Mango Peach, and Caramel Macchiato or Caramel Macchiato or Caramel Macchiato. Ketoned has helped millions of people on their keto journey since 2016. Read online what Ketoned customers have to say, and Ketoned is giving my audience 30% off plus 2 free bottles of Keto Charged when you go to ketoned.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman at checkout. Well, my friends, there's been a terribly tragic accident in Russia where a Russian official who criticized Putin's invasion of Ukraine has been found dead after accidentally falling out of a window in the very hospital where he was receiving treatment for an illness. It's just a terribly tragic accident that absolutely no one believes is an accident. It's another one of these bizarre situations. Reuters reports, top Russian oil official dies after fall from hospital window. Reveal Maganov, the chairman of Russia's second largest oil producer, Lukoil, died earlier today, after falling from a hospital window in Moscow, becoming the latest in a series of businessmen to meet with sudden, unexplained deaths. The sources confirmed reports by several Russian media that the 67-year-old plunged to his death in unclear circumstances. 2 people who knew him well said it was highly unlikely he committed suicide. Another source close to the company said there was belief inside Lukoil management that he killed himself, but he had not seen evidence or documents to support that. When Moscow police were asked, are you investigating this as a suspicious death? They said, well, talk to the investigative committee. The committee didn't say anything. Lukoil said in a statement, Maganov passed away following a serious illness. Well, that's very different. You're sick in bed and you want some fresh air. You get up to open the window to get some fresh air and you trip over, your IV line or a banana peel. And next thing you know, you fall out the window to your death? That doesn't sound right. Several other senior executives with ties to Russia's energy industry have died suddenly in unclear circumstances in the past few months. The day after Russia sent forces into Ukraine, a Gazprom executive was found dead in his garage near St. Petersburg. In April, Sergei Protosenya, top manager of Russia's largest liquefied natural gas producer Novatek, was found dead with his wife and daughter in Spain. In May, Russian media reported a former Lukoil manager, Alexander Subotin, was found dead in a basement of a house. And the same month, Russian media said Vladislav Avayev, an ex-vice president of Gazprom Bank, was also found dead at a Moscow apartment with the bodies of his wife and daughter. I don't know about that. Unusual among Russian companies, Lukoil took a stand over Moscow's intervention in Ukraine. They expressed concern over the tragic events and called for the soonest possible end to armed conflict. Well, that starts to get a little suspicious, doesn't it? Now, some of you might be wondering, why do these people, let's be honest, why do they keep getting killed in the same way? Doesn't that make it too obvious? Well, that's the point. It's not that they're out of ideas. The idea here is you send a message. If people really believed that these were accidents, then the threat that you might get killed, even if you're powerful, just for opposing the Putin regime, it doesn't come across. It doesn't have the power and the weight that it does. That's the whole point. This accident that always looks the same. Oh, you know what? They shot themselves in the back 4 times. They fell out of a window and then stabbed themselves a dozen times, right? You get the absurdity of it. The fact that it is so absurd is the entire point. And it creates this environment where some critics choose not to speak out. And it's Putin's Russia. It's Putin's Russia is what it is. And no tragic accident, I think we can say with almost complete and total certainty. There are some reports getting significant traction that the Department of Justice is deliberately waiting until after the midterm election to indict Donald Trump in order to not be seen as making this political in order to affect the midterms. Now, a lot of common sense applied to the circumstances suggests that it's not likely Trump would be indicted before the midterms anyway. And I'll tell you why in a moment. Couple of different reports here. DOJ likely to wait past the midterms to reveal any Trump charges. That's from Bloomberg's Chris Strom. Federal prosecutors are likely to wait until after the November election to announce any charges against Trump if they determine that he broke laws. Business Insider reporting, if prosecutors decide to indict Trump, they'll wait until after the November midterms based on a report. The move would be in accordance with longstanding policy that bars prosecutors from taking overt steps that could affect the outcome of an election. Attorney General Merrick Garland also recently introduced new restrictions to, quote, maintain public trust in the DOJ. So there's a couple different things that I think are important to mention here. First of all, Donald Trump isn't on any ballot, so it's a particular layer removed to if what is happening here is the DOJ is saying we're going to bring charges, but not until after the election. Trump's not actually on any ballot. So it would be better to just do the job that you're trying to do. Stop going so out of your way not to be political, because at the end of the day, when you're investigating current or former elected officials, you're not going to avoid allegations that it is political in some sense. Now, if Donald Trump were on the ballot, if Donald Trump were running for something in November, and 2 weeks before he is charged with a crime, although it still could be completely correct and apolitical, we've gotten all the evidence, we've gotten all the, as Sean Hannity calls it, the I's crossed and the T's dotted, and we're ready to go. If that's the timing, to deliberately wait until after the election, that actually seems more politically motivated than just charging when you're ready to charge. But that's not the case here because Trump's not even on the ballot. So if this were the calculation that were being made by the DOJ, it is a very indirect thing where it's, well, even though Trump's not on the ballot, there are members of his party on the ballot and people that he has endorsed on the ballot. So let's wait. I would be completely against that. But I actually think that this entire narrative may not be accurate. And the reason I say that is it does take a while to put together charges. And according to people familiar with what's going on, 8.5 weeks for charges. They just got a huge chunk of documents. It's now September, in August, weeks ago. It is often the case that it takes months after search warrants are served to finalize what are all the charges. Now, without a doubt, when the FBI decides we're going into the home of a former president, which they don't often decide, arguably this is the first time it's happened, you'd better damn well be sure that they already know likely charges that are on the other end of this. And they know exactly what they're looking for and what they believe took place. But at the same time, you've got to go through every document. You have to see the legal implications of every document that's there. Later, I'm going to tell you about multiple Trump associates who believe there are more documents or there are copies of documents that Donald Trump still has stashed elsewhere. And so it's not particularly realistic to think that within 10 weeks of getting the documents to begin with, you're already going to be charging Donald Trump. So while I completely disagree with the idea of deliberately waiting to file charges until after the election, because Trump's not even on the ballot, I totally disagree with that if that is what is going on. It seems more likely to me that the timeline is going to extend beyond the first week of November anyway. And I do believe we will see an indictment, but I think it's going to come later. Now, when we see the indictment, it will be very interesting to see how Trump's lawyers react. And we have a little bit of a preview of that. This you have to see. Trump's lawyers are now moving on to the next step in the deranged defense of Trump, which is the things Trump might be charged with aren't really crimes. They're not really serious. These are mundane things. I know. They started with there were no documents, and if there were documents, they were planted by the FBI. They moved on to it's Trump's right to have that stuff there, and he declassified them, but then the classification status wasn't actually the issue. And they've moved on to all these different arguments. And the latest one, and this is beyond parody, the latest one is these are not really crimes. This is mundane stuff. Trump attorney Alina Habba appeared yesterday on the Charlie Kirk show, and you have to see this to believe it. She says, look at the stuff they're investigating Trump for, things like espionage. It's so mundane. Now, I don't know about you, but a former president being investigated for espionage seems pretty serious to me. But this is the new argument they're coming up with. And
they say themselves in these papers that they filed that this is under the Presidential Records Act. So what they did was to try and criminalize Donald Trump, as they always do. They found these 3 mundane statutes, espionage and the 2 others, obstruction, and they're trying to claim that there was some sort of criminal activity, but their papers say it's under the Presidential Records Act. So your admission is the power that we've all been saying he does have. So you can take a picture of top secret documents, Charlie, and show the world a label. But if they're declassified, as he has the right to do, then he has the right to have them. And he was working together with NARA, as we know. And that back and forth could have been done at a table as they had been doing for months prior.
So there's about a dozen different lies in there. The documents were not declassified, and also their classification is not actually what's at issue. And they were speaking with Trump, but Trump and his lawyers did not provide back the documents the FBI was waiting. You know, it's lies after lie after lie. But the idea that these are just mundane statutes like espionage, I mean, it's basically jaywalking, you know, it's just something police can use if they want to mess with people or something like that. It's stunning that this is now where they are going. And by the way, Alina Habba also now places herself at the crime scene. Is she not aware of the Fifth Amendment, or just like, you know, shutting your mouth and not saying things that could get you pulled in to where you might now need a lawyer? Here is Alina Habba on Fox saying she has firsthand knowledge. She was there in Trump's office.
Yeah, nowhere. What's happened is now they've put this picture out so that you would assume, and I am somebody who has been, and the press loves to talk about this, especially today. I'm somebody that has been in his office. I've seen it.
Oh.
This is not the way his office looks. They give you this appearance that you walk in, and there's these top secret documents just strewn about.
Strewn.
A, B, they don't understand. something could be marked top secret, could be marked classified. The Presidential Records Act, he would have said this is declassified. It doesn't get a new marking all the time. He's left the office.
All right, so you get the point. And again, the classification status of the documents for most of the crimes Trump's being investigated for is not actually what is at issue. Is this the next Trump lawyer to potentially be disbarred? Is this the next Trump lawyer to maybe need a lawyer? Remember, MAGA, making attorneys get attorneys. Unclear. But she doesn't have to implicate herself as a material fact witness, as so often Donald Trump's lawyers end up being. It's really something else. You can see all these clips if you're just listening today and curious what some of these people look like that we're hearing from. You can find all of these clips on our Instagram. Just search for David Pakman Show on Instagram. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpakman.com. Well, today we're going to be speaking with Mike Cargile. Mike Cargile is running for Congress in California's 35th congressional district. I believe, Mike, you're the only congressional candidate this cycle who it has been unendorsed by the Republican Party. Is that a correct credential that you have?
Yes, actually, I am the only congressional candidate in the nation who's been unendorsed twice now by the Republican Party for being what they consider too conservative.
So give me was there communication? Did they tell you on what issues you're just too far to the right?
No, actually, they scrolled. A few weeks ago, they had an unendorsement meeting of their board of directors.
Yeah.
And they said, here, you've got 2 minutes to talk. And I said, talk about what? What do you want to talk about? And they said, well, watch this. And they rolled 4 minutes of memes off of Facebook that go all the way back to 2018. And I knew where this came from because this was how George Soros had attacked me in the last cycle.
Oh, Soros is going after you.
He has. And so the Republican Party's using the Soros playbook. He came after me with Media Matters and Axios last time.
Would you say Soros has infiltrated the Republican establishment at this point?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So they came after me and tried to. Now, remember back in 2020, this was the world of BLM riots and things like that. So he had unearthed a conversation, a private conversation I had with a friend of mine about the use, the prevalent use of the N-word in rap music. And I said, that's all. And so we're typing this out. And I said, that's all they're doing right now is building the songs around the N-word. And I typed the N-word out, expressing, my concern because
right. Not a word you would ever use other than citing it, of course.
Correct. But when you're having a conversation in Messenger, you have to type it out.
Right.
And so they found this and said, oh, look, he's a racist. He's using the N-word. And that was the narrative. And the New York Times picked it up, LA Times, Boston, everywhere suddenly because of the environment at that time.
Wow, that is so, Mike, I don't want to let this slip because this is mind blowing. George Soros, who at the time of, I guess when this happened was 90, I think he's 92 now, 90-year-old George Soros obtained a private text communication that you had with someone else bemoaning the use of the N-word in rap music. Is that right?
Yes.
Wow. That is an incredible story.
And then they take it and they go, look, see, white guy writes out the N-word and he's a racist. And then, wow. They just sort of cascade, and that's politics.
It's almost unbelievable, to be perfectly frank. I think many in my audience will struggle to believe that.
Well, it's what happened, and It was what was regurgitated by the California Republican Party a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
As further evidence, and they said publicly in their meeting, anyone can look this up because it's all over the internet now, what they did to me. But But they said, how did this guy make it through the primary? We unendorsed him in 2020, and here he is again. And we're having to unendorse him again. I'm the
Mike,
only one
listen,
in the country.
Just as a gut check, we're doing this when we speak to 2022 candidates, and it's a weird question to ask, but I hope you'll indulge me. Who is the real president of the United States right now?
Well, who's sitting in the White House? That's Joe Biden.
Right.
Was he there legitimately? I don't know. Let's find out. I'm on a lawsuit that's at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals right now. Our oral arguments will begin September 23rd. And we're asking to forensically audit 13 counties in California. Most important lawsuit in the nation.
Is it?
And I want to get to the bottom of this question because people go, he's not legit. He is legit. It was stolen. It wasn't stolen. Folks, nobody knows.
Well, but hold on a second, Mike. Let's see if we can break that down, though, because so nobody knows. We have results from California, right? The results from California are Biden got 11.1 million votes. Trump got 6 million votes. Overwhelming victory for Biden. Those are the results we have. In order to say we don't know, we should have some reason to question those results. What reason do you have to question the results that make you say, I can't be confident that we have the real numbers?
Well, David, if you were an Olympian and you ran a race and you got the gold medal, let's say you're like Usain Bolt. You ran this race, you got the gold medal.
Yep.
What's the first thing they do after you set that world record? They do a blood test.
Okay.
And they check to see if you have performance enhancing drugs in your system.
Okay.
That's an audit. They do an audit of your bloodstream. Why don't we do the same thing with the greatest race in the world, which is the U.S. presidential election?
Well, I think one reason would be just the voter registration numbers in California are so lopsided towards Democrats that it's very hard to believe that there would be any real outcome there other than Biden easily winning. I mean, let me ask you a question. What do you suspect were the real results in California?
I don't know.
Okay, but it's a cop out to say you don't know. What reason do you have to question the results?
Thousands and thousands of affidavits that have been submitted to my co-plaintiff under, they notarized and, the charge of perjury if you lie on this, that they saw things that were not right, conducted at a myriad of places, including the polling places, including ballot drop-off boxes. Nobody knows, and yet no one wants to look. And all I'm asking with my co-plaintiffs is, let's open the hood and let's actually see what occurred.
Okay, but when you look at the voter registration numbers, even if there were tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of these instances, right? California, only 24% of registered voters are Republicans. There's just no way Trump could have won.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that. Did you know this?
Okay.
There are 2.8 million more registered voters in California than there are citizens.
No, that is absolutely untrue.
We've got the data to prove it.
I hope you will send it to me.
My co-plaintiff is the Election Integrity Project, California.
Okay.
And they
listen, because I don't have, I mean, I've not seen that. I mean, send it to me. Send it to me. Every state in which it has been claimed that there are more voters than citizens, it has been debunked. And it seems in California, it wouldn't be even close.
Has any state done a forensic audit?
Well, the states have done all sorts of evaluations and recounts and audits, but then someone always comes. Hold on, but Mike, hold on.
Yes, go ahead.
Someone then comes along and says, that's not the type of audit I meant.
No, they've done recounts. Nobody has done an audit.
In Arizona, an audit was done, and it found Biden got even more votes.
The Arizona audit was not done properly. What we're looking for is this. We have three things in our complaint.
Yeah.
Here's the ballot. I want to look at the envelope, and then let's look at the machine.
Okay.
So they've had to look at they've safeguarded the images of the hard drives. We have the voter rolls, and let's compare all 4 of those.
All right. Well, let's
And
do
where-
that. We're not going to be able to do it today. So in the interest
Well,
of
we can start today.
we can say, no, I mean, you and I won't be able to. Now, listen, I want to ask you something. There's this guy who my audience knows him as Mike Pillow. He's the CEO of My Pillow, Mike Lindell. But as a shorthand, we'll sometimes call him Mike Pillow or even just Pillow. Everybody knows who he is.
Sure.
He is obsessed with the machines, and he actually wants to sue every machine. Are you, where are you on the machines?
Well, I think the machines need to be looked at.
Okay.
I think just like Dinesh D'Souza's movie with 2,000 Mules,
Oof.
the ballot drop-off boxes need to be looked at. One of the areas in our lawsuit is the Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. It's called the Guarantee Clause.
Mm-hmm.
And the federal government is supposed to guarantee that we are free from foreign invasion. But it doesn't say how the foreign invasion is conducted. And right now we have no safeguards in California election law to say China can't submit 30 million ballots, and we have no way to safeguard against it when they, under the guise of COVID, have removed all the safeguards in place.
But Mike, do you have reason to believe China submitted 30 million ballots? It's very easy to say, I can't prove to you that it wasn't done. You can't prove to me it wasn't done. But do you have reason to believe China submitted 30 million ballots? I've seen no such evidence.
I don't need the evidence. I have the Constitution, which says any law that allows China to do this is unconstitutional because it allows for foreign invasion, whether it's at the ballot box or the shoreline.
How can China submit 30 million ballots when you have to be an American citizen in order to even register to vote? How is that even possible?
Because you can do it through the ballot boxes. No verification needed. In California, you can have same-day voter registration. You don't have to vote. You can literally walk in on November 8th and say, I've never voted in my life before and I'd like a ballot.
Right,
They
but if
can't
you're
ask
walking
you-
in and voting, then you're an American citizen who is registering to vote. How is China doing that?
They can do it at they can do it through the boxes, the drop-off boxes. See, they can't deny any ballot they receive up until the close of business November 8th.
Right, but then they look at it, and if it's not a registered, if it's not a citizen, then it's an invalid
How
ballot.
do they know it's not a citizen? There's no checks in place. You don't know. They're not even allowed to ask for ID. They don't know if you're a citizen and non-citizen in California. This is the thing, David.
But Mike,
Go ahead.
there were 17 million votes in California. Okay, just hear out the numbers. There were 17 million votes in California. Biden got 11, Trump got 6. When you talk about any one ballot box and you talk about China and 30 million ballots and on, even if I grant you that every one of your thousands of affidavits is bona fide proof of some fraud, right? Bona fide proof. When the voting public is only 17 million people, how on earth do you think that they're going to be able to slip by this number of fraudulent, fake, whatever votes, and only a few thousand people submit affidavits? It's impossible to believe that.
Well, then would you join me in calling for an audit of the system so
No,
we can
I
put the
see no
issue to
reason
rest?
to audit this. There's just
But
the
see-
numbers don't add up. There's no reason to audit it.
No, if you won the gold medal, we would automatically audit the race.
Okay, well,
There should be an
Olympic
automatic
100-meter dash is not voting. Did you have no? I mean, Mike, that doesn't make any sense. It sounds silly.
No, it makes total sense because any competition in the United States, if Tom Brady uses an underinflated football,
Yeah.
we almost tear the country apart. Why don't we do that for the greatest competition in the land, which
This
is the
sounds
US?
so silly, though, Mike. It sounds silly. I don't know that this is going to win you the 35th district. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm not trying to please somebody. I'm
Oh,
trying
okay.
to say, let's get to the bottom of this issue so that we can all be comfortable with U.S. elections once again.
Most people are comfortable. That's the thing. When you poll people, most people are comfortable.
No, that's not true.
What poll do you have that suggests
you're-
that?
Well, the poll of my district, and I can show you that by the amount of people who wait to go to the polling locations because they don't trust.
That's not a
the
poll,
system.
Mike. Most people just vote on election day. That doesn't mean they don't trust another system. Listen, Mike, we don't have unlimited time. There's a really other important thing I want to ask you about because
Sure,
I read
go
this
ahead.
about you. Do you believe that a satanic cabal is in charge of the United States?
I think there's a satanic cabal running the world.
Mm.
Yes,
And
they
when
go
you
to
say
places
that,
like Davos and the World Economic Forum.
who are some of the satanic individuals?
Well, you've seen a few of them already. They're not hiding it. You look at any high profile rap artist. From the Clinton camp. I believe Barack Obama has been involved in some of it. But you look at the Soroses, you look at the Rockefeller types. But then,
Mike, because sometimes people are so vague. Rockefeller types. So, I mean, let me just ask you, is George Soros demonically or satanically possessed?
I don't know.
You don't know. Is Barack Obama?
I don't know.
But you just listed both of them.
Have you ever asked them?
No, I've not spoken. I've never asked them
I
anything.
haven't
But
either.
who am I, right? But what I'm saying is,
I can only look at their actions.
And do you believe that their actions are evidence of satanic possession?
I don't know.
But then
I
why
just
are you
know-
bringing their names up?
Because they're trying to destroy humanity.
Okay. Who are the Rockefeller types you mentioned?
Well, you've seen them. I'm not going to get into name dropping right now. We'll deal with that later on.
Who will deal with it, though? It seems we would want to know. If you have the list, I want to know who these people are.
Well, if you would get me the Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell list, I could probably point to a lot of them.
Mike, I got to ask you a serious question here, and I hope you don't take offense. Are most of these satanically possessed people either black or Jewish? Because you're naming a lot of black and Jewish people.
I don't know their ethnicity.
You don't know Obama's ethnicity?
Well, is he? I don't know what
You're not
he
sure.
claims to be one thing, and he's also claimed publicly to be another thing.
What do you mean?
Well, is he a U.S. citizen? Is he an African citizen? Is he, this goes back to the whole, birth certificate argument.
Oh my God.
I don't have an opinion on it. I just know that this man has presented himself to be one way, and then his actions were entirely another way. He's been the most divisive, hate-filled president we probably had ever had until Joe Biden, which is really Obama 3.0.
Wow. So you don't know what about Soros and Epstein? Did you know that they're Jewish?
I don't care.
You don't care.
I don't care what they are. I'm judging them by their actions, more
Right.
the content of the character than the color of the skin.
So
that seems a very superficial argument to bring in.
can satanic possession be cured?
Well, if you remove the possessor, I guess so, yeah.
How is that done, though?
Well, biblically, it would be through an exorcism or something of that nature.
Wow. That sounds extremely serious.
Well, are you demonically possessed?
Not that I'm aware of. Do I seem it to you?
No.
Oh, well, I'm just saying it sounds
so
like
it
an
looks like you're in the
exorcism
clear.
is very serious.
Well, I would say that anyone who's bent on destroying the human race
Yeah.
is probably in league with the one that you would say is the enemy of the human race, and that would be Satan himself.
Wow. This is bumming me out, Mike. I'm not going to lie. This is a sad outlook. It's making me sad about humanity.
But look what just occurred, David.
Yeah.
We got assaulted by a virus and then a vaccine we were misled by. We've got a Green New Deal that's going to destroy and collapse the U.S. economy.
Well,
And that's just the U.S. Look at what's going on in Europe. Look what's going on in Asia. It's a concerted effort to thin the world of humans.
dear God. And then, but now on the other end of that, what's the goal? Why thin the world of humans? Who benefits?
Well, if you see people like you and I
Yeah.
made in God's image as your enemy, well, then that's a victory for you.
You just get rid of the bad people, essentially.
and enough to have sort of an army of slaves, which is, if you take communism at its truest form, that's just a small group of people controlling a very large group of people through fear and dependency. So we're looking at a world of slaves that's being run by a few people, and they're okay. They seem to be okay with slavery as long as they get to be the new masters.
Wow.
And that's where your color component comes in, because it's really not color dependent. It's who gets to play the master this time around. And we have, I believe, more slaves now in the United States because of our open southern border and our ports of entry being wide open than we've ever had. And my opponent is one of the chief supporters of the wide open border, and I believe is responsible for a lot of the human trafficking that has come out of particularly Guatemala. But
well,
Central
Mike,
and
listen,
South
I have
America-
not seen evidence of that. I will investigate it. I have to say, in total honesty, some of this stuff is pretty out there, even for the Republican Party. So I sort of understand the unendorsement. This is some pretty out there stuff that you're saying.
But just saying it's out there doesn't mean it's not true. It just means you haven't come to terms with it
That's
yet.
absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct.
And I think that we would all benefit if we would all call for three things, and that's that they would release the Jeffrey Epstein tapes,
Okay.
and they would release the Ghislaine Maxwell list. You know, how
Okay.
do you get charged?
I want to see that
with-
list. Sure.
I know, with human trafficking, but there's no perpetrators. You've got the victims, but you don't have the perps. And then just join me in calling for an audit of the election system so we can put the issue to bed. If Joe Biden was fairly elected, I would be the first guy to say, okay, now we've got our marching orders, let's fight against it. But if we're not going to look under the hood and see what happened,
Yeah.
then we're supporting cheating.
Well, Mike Cargile, you've really said it all. We are going to be very closely watching that race in the 35th Congressional District, and I can't thank you enough for really giving our audience a lot to think about, a lot to chew on for sure. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on, David. Anytime. I'm an open book, and if you want to talk about anything, I think that's the greatest problem right now in the United States is everyone's yelling at each other.
We must talk. We must
Yes,
talk.
We must talk, and we can disagree, but we need to do so with civil discourse.
If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Donald Trump appeared this morning on a program called American Sunrise on a channel called Real America's Voice. It's as much of a mystery to me as it is to you, but this appears to be where Donald Trump is increasingly able to be interviewed. And he has broken his silence after these incriminating photos of top secret and secret documents were published from Donald Trump's office. And it's really, really bad. So let's take a quick listen. Won't spend a lot of time on it, but here is Trump weighing in, I guess. Take a look at this.
A lot of people think that when you walk into my office, I have confidential documents or whatever it may be, all declassified. But I have confidential documents spread out all over my floor. And like a slob, like I'm sitting there reading these documents all day long, or somebody else would be.
Right.
It's so dishonest when you look at it. And so people were concerned because they said, gee, that's a strange scene. You look at the floor and you see documents, right? They have cover sheets of documents. No, they put them there, John, and they put them there in a messy fashion. And then they took a picture and they released it to the public. And this is what we're dealing with these people.
Oh, that is just the best. Now, it is completely plausible. It really is. It's completely plausible that the documents were displayed in that way because that's how the FBI sort of laid them out in order to show everything that was there. But Trump's office is the office of a slob. I mean, these pictures are widely available from different times at which Trump has been interviewed. His desk and his office are covered with papers and stuff. So we don't know the truth of whether Trump had the documents all over the floor or whether they were placed there by the FBI. But just look at pictures of Trump's office. We have one up on the screen. There are literally papers all over Donald Trump's desk. There are stacks of binders and books and boxes and papers behind Trump. It's a complete and total mess. The guy is a slob. So when he tells you that he's not, don't believe it. We've seen it. We know exactly what is going on there. And the truth of, did the FBI lay out those documents or not? But not it totally plausible that the FBI did lay them out as they do in order to take pictures of exhibits that they need of the things that are found. But Trump is a slob and his office is a complete and total mess. It's been that way for decades. We now have heard from former National Security Advisor John Bolton and former attorney to Donald Trump and friend of the show, Michael Cohen. Both believe that Donald Trump probably has, one, more documents at some of his other houses, and number two, even copies of the documents that were seized by the FBI. And it really wouldn't be surprising that both are true. Let's first listen to Trump's former National Security Advisor, John Bolton. Not a guy that I like politically. I think he is a depraved, warmongering individual, but I've not known him to be overtly dishonest in interviews that he does when it comes to just basic factual matters. Sure, he'll distort about the case for war. He's done that before. But he has appeared to be completely straightforward, at least on factual matters of this sort. Take a listen to what he had to say when he was interviewed.
Well, given that it's Donald Trump we're talking about, I'm not surprised in the slightest, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were more highly classified documents at Bedminster or some other residence of his. I just think it's important that everybody, whether they're pro-Trump or anti-Trump or whatever their position is, to try and take a deep breath here, let this process play out. The filing that was done last night in the United States that included that picture that you've shown there and a lot of information about the documents and about Trump's obstruction is the word they use, the refusal to turn them over to the National Archives, is revealing bit by bit the seriousness of the case. And we don't know all the details yet. It could be very, very serious. But my strong urging to everybody is stay calm. Let's let it play out. We've got due process in the United States. The facts will come out here, but let's not jump to conclusions that the Justice Department is an arm of the Democratic Party on the one hand, or that Trump ought to go to jail tomorrow on the other.
Yeah. And of course, there's no evidence that this Justice Department investigation is operating at the direction of Joe Biden or any such thing. Now, we heard something similar from Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen tweeted, quote, I have been saying this since the FBI raid. I believe Trump has copies, potentially other documents as well, at other locations, including his children's homes, Weisselberg's Florida home. Alan Weisselberg is the CFO, now indicted, of Trump's business, Bedminster, New Jersey golf course, Fifth Avenue apartment, etc. Now, if this is true, and it's completely plausibly true, there are probably foreign spies already trying to infiltrate those locations. With how easy it has been for foreign agents to get into Mar-a-Lago over the last few years, it would not be shocking at all that some of our adversaries are already looking at whether Donald Trump has other documents or copies of documents at some of his other homes. And we talked earlier about, is the DOJ being political if they are deliberately waiting until after the midterms to indict Trump? The more I learn, the more it sounds like they're nowhere near ready to charge, because they may need to have more search warrants. They may need to try to find documents at other of Trump's homes, the way things are looking. And at this point, from a national security standpoint, it has to be assumed that everything's compromised. Any of these documents that Trump took, it has to be assumed that our adversaries may have gotten their hands on them. It has to be assumed that there are copies because it's Trump, after all. And the person who is now trying to clean up this mess, but only making things worse, is Donald Trump's spokeswoman, Liz Harrington. Let's talk about her next. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Liz Harrington. Liz Harrington is Donald Trump's sort of Soviet style spokeswoman. North Korean propaganda agents have seen Liz Harrington and her videos, and it makes them blush. It's really something else. She is making the unfounded claim, and this is sort of, we've seen it evolve over time. First, it was the FBI planted the documents. Then it was there were no documents. Then it was they were there, but they were Trump's right to have because he declassified them, but the classification didn't matter. So then it was back to, well, the FBI planted. It's a circle. It's just a revolving door. It's like a hamster wheel of throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Liz Harrington is now going back to Biden and his administration have directed this entire thing. Check out her interview on the water cooler on Real America's Voice.
How much do you think the Biden administration is involved with this, specifically Joe Biden? Then again, with Joe Biden, we're never quite sure what he knows at this point with all the faux pas. But what's your sense about the Biden administration? How much do you think this is going to trail back to them?
Well, I mean, similarly to what happened with the Russiagate, right? I mean, it's largely the
Russiagate.
Same people that were involved in the Obama-Biden administration and the setting up the false accusations of Russia collusion with the Clinton campaign. But that was all spun into motion during the transition period, using, this lawfare, but also the intelligence community against their political opponents. So I think they're very much involved. I think it's very much the same people. And that's what we really need, I think, to your point, David, the answers to. We need accountability here.
Yeah. And so she says it's obvious that Biden was very, very involved. And also throwing in during another moment of the interview, Trump can have whatever the hell he wants at his house.
The big question still does remain about why President Trump had these records there down at Mar-a-Lago in the first place. Is there anything you can tell us about that? I think that's kind of one thing that's still been out there, and people trying to understand that. At least the layperson is trying to understand.
Because it's completely not understandable unless it's for nefarious reasons or unless Trump wants to pretend to still be president.
I think the key point here is the Presidential Records Act. Presidential. He's the president. And the fake news media is trying to pretend that he wasn't, or that he was just some, paper pusher like these bureaucrats at the National Archives. No, he's the president. He is correspondent. He had every right to keep whatever he wants and possess whatever he wanted to. And obviously, when he left the White House, he took some documents with him. It was his prerogative.
Now, understand that not only is that not true, it doesn't actually answer the question. The question was, why did Trump want the documents? And there really is no benign explanation. It's the explanations go from bad to very, very bad to really, really bad, like treasonous bad. And her answer is both not an answer to the question, but it's also not true that he can just take whatever he wants. Even Republican strategist Karl Rove said on Fox News the other night, these are simply not Trump's documents to take. You don't just declassify things by saying, I wish them declassified, and things are not de facto declassified because Trump, stuck them in his pants or in a box and took them to his house. So really just Soviet style propaganda there from Liz Harrington. And we have to hope. Here's the hope. OK, I've said before, I think Trump's getting indicted. I don't think he's going to prison. There has been a lot of really bad stuff that went on here. And it seems clear that at least some people committed crimes. If no one ends up seeing consequences for what has gone on, it will be a major indictment of the two-tiered American justice system. Not that we need more indictments of it. It's been indicted plenty. We've seen that over the last decade. But it would be a real injustice if there are no consequences for what went down. And all we can do is continue to wait and see. We have a voicemail number, which is 219-2-DAVID-P. Despite all of my criticisms of Joe Rogan, here's someone who calls in and says, I'm not willing to criticize Joe Rogan.
Hey, David. I know you like Rogan. I know, you hesitate to talk badly about him
No, I don't. You might have me confused with someone else. I know that there are lots of people who won't criticize Rogan, but I criticize Rogan all the time. In fact, I sort of suspect he probably would never have me back on as a result of my criticisms.
You know, to an extent, you'll say things, but you still kind of go easy on him. But he's gone, man. He is completely gone off the deep end. You see it every single episode. I can't even watch anymore. I can't even listen anymore.
I agree that he's gone fully into right-wing propaganda.
But, you know, he's telling people straight up, vote Republican.
Yeah.
Everything. The Democrats are bad. Blah, blah, blah. It's a propaganda network. Soon enough, he'll be far right-wing commentator. He's already on his way there.
Yeah, listen, I criticize Rogan all the time. I don't know what you're talking about. The criticisms are not mealy-mouthed. The criticisms are clear and they're direct. So I'm just not sure what you're talking about. We have a fantastic bonus show for you today.
Oh, the bonus show where you want to make money. Everybody else that makes money to fund themselves is bad.
We're going to talk about a Texas school board rejecting "In God We Trust" signs in Arabic. Oh boy, here we go again. U.S. life expectancy dropped in 2021 for the second consecutive year. And Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and Lou Dobbs are going to be deposed in the Dominion Voting Systems lawsuit against Fox News. It is delightful, folks. It is delightful. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. Sign up at joinpacman.com and you can use the coupon code BIGVOTING22 to secure a lifetime discount on your membership.